I've been playing this game for almost 10 years now. When people get around this time, usually they get bored. Like one of those Minecraft YouTubers who kept playing and making videos on the same game over and over. Don't get me wrong, Wizard101 is a fun game with a unique turn-based combat system. If you can cloud your mind or shield your eyes from the microtransactions around every corner. However, in this video I don't really want to talk about the problems of the game. I mainly want to get down to what made the game great, and what keeps the players playing it. First, I decided to make a poll on the Wizard101 Central forums for what people thought was the golden age of Wizard101. Because who else would know about the good old days besides old-timers? Now for those who are wondering, no, I didn't vote in the poll. The golden age are the years where Wizard101 prospered the most, in terms of both money and popularity. Now I decided to stop at 2015 because there were only 2 big world updates in the span of 5 years between late 2015 and 2020. According to the polls, 2010 was the golden age for Wizard101. 2009 came in second and 2012 came in third. So why did people pick 2009 and 2010? A few specific arguments would be that loot crates did not exist at this time in the early days, schools were better balanced, and in general, the game was less of a grind. Also, we had more money in our wallets. My search began with the world known as Celestia. For those who don't play, this all started 1 year later with the release of the second arc following the end of the first arc in 2009. With that information, I decided to look at the Google Trends chart for Wizard101 since to my knowledge, most searches come from the Google search engine. For those unsure of what Google Trends is, it basically gathers everyone's search history over time on Google and presents it in this neat little chart. The numbers represent the value or popularity of the term relative to a region or time. I'm going to focus on the main chart because it includes all the sub-regions. From what I saw, the release of Celestia and the ongoing months were very popular. But it wasn't necessarily the peak, so I decided to look up a couple of terms for Wizard101, like with a space and without a space to see if there were any differences, and to rule out inconsistencies. Now I did search up other terms like Wiz101 or W101, but it didn't turn up any useful results. I also looked up Wiz on its own, but all that really resulted in was Wiz Khalifa. I decided to look at 2 search words, Wizard101 as the game and Wizard101 as a term. Although the beginning might look irregular, the rest of the graph from 2010 to the present stayed fairly consistent. The next thing I did was see what made people search for Wizard101 a lot more during that time. What I also found interesting during this time, KingsIsle released 3 commercials, which I believe contributed to this influx of search results. These 3 commercials portrayed the game as hyper-realistic, which probably would have enticed a lot of people during this time. Now, if the game actually looked and played like that, everybody would flock to this game. It seemed to me KingsIsle had a ton of money at that point to be able to produce these high-quality commercials. Even back in 2010, they were able to afford sponsorships from Selena Gomez or Nick Jonas. Anyway, then I decided to look at each low point before the big spike in each year, which you can probably tell something big like a new world would be released. In May of 2012, surprisingly, that was when Avalon was released, and in a few months, Azteca would be released as well. On the graph, it shows that in June and July, that's when everything took off. Logically speaking, players would need time to play the new content and quest through the worlds. So in theory, they would have needed to search up the latest information on it. Then I decided to look at the Wizard101 website for the amount of updates for that year. And trust me, there were quite a few important updates such as the introduction of Megapets. What's also important to note, Part 101 was announced a few months back before this date, and people were given beta keys to that game. Oh yeah, and not that it really matters a whole lot, but I did find out through other closely related words that during this time, Diablo 3 came out. So I would assume people were doing Google searches for wizard builds of some kind. I mean, after all, it is called Wizard101. By definition, it's an introductory course. So I'd say that it contributed somewhat to Wizard101's growth, even if it's just a little bit. Now you might be thinking, but Hunter, what about the release of Celestia? Well, it's somewhat close comparing numbers, but it's almost comparing apples to oranges. Now, I'm not saying one world was the reason why it's the peak of Wizard101's time, but it was a culmination of a lot of factors that led to it having a huge spike in popularity. 2012 was a phenomenal year for KingsIsle and for Wizard101. However, what made Wizard101's surging popularity was the release of Celestia in pre-2010. There's also the matter of Todd J. Coleman, who was the vice president, co-founder, and creative director for Wizard101. He left back in early February of 2013 to pursue other interests, such as the game Crowfall. In my opinion, he contributed a lot to the success in the early years and probably had a lot to say in the marketing direction. I also took a look at the Google Keyword Planner to see how many searches Wizard101 gets a month, and while I didn't get much of an accurate number, let's just say that it's not as high as most other games. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. For those who are new, subscribing is just a click away, and it would mean a lot to me. Take care and see you guys.
NANI?!